Let's look at case study number 1. Now, this is a case study where I had to have a change of mindset. I had to have vision when I was in the field, and I was also stacking the rules of composition. So this video will place us in Mount Assiniboine Provincial Park in British Columbia. This is in the Canadian Rockies. This is a trip I went on with Leah, my wife, and for this trip we had to book months in advance with a helicopter company that flew us into the Rockies, and then from there we stayed at a little lodge and then did hiking day trips to the viewpoint. Now the crux of this story is the fact that my mindset was that we were there to have 2 opportunities. There were 2 sunsets, 2 cracks at getting a really beautiful shot of the main big mountain. I had shot this mountain some years previously, and I was back at Mount Assiniboine to try and get another really great photo of the same mountain, of Mount Assiniboine. And so again, there were 2 sunset opportunities is all that we had on this trip. We were only there for 2 nights. There's a lot of hiking to get to the photo location. And so I will start to roll the video with our helicopter ride in. It's a pretty interesting video because I, as a result, was able to get this photo right here. And I've searched on the internet and I've never seen a photo quite like it. It may be a completely new and original composition. I can assure you that it certainly was for me, because I felt like I was breaking new ground when I took this panorama photo. So enjoy. Chopper's inbound. So when the helicopter landed, we got rolling and we started to hike right away. And we began to hike up to the top. Now this is bear country, this is grizzly bear country. And so we were prepared for that. We made sure that we had our bear spray and our little bells that jingle, and we were bear aware, but I've never had any problems with bears at any time in my life. So destination number 1 was to get up to the big viewpoint at the very top. And this viewpoint is one of those places where you can take a photo with any kind of camera and you're going to get that shot that you're seeing right there, and it is going to look absolutely freaking fantastic. I mean, you don't really have to think about composition very much. There it is with the sun going down. Like, talk about beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. And it's like, lift up your cell phone and take a photo, and you're going to get a 10 out of 10 image. And this is what I call like making sure that I've got my safety shot. So the shot of the trip that was done, and I knew that I had my really good shot, and that no matter if things kind of went downhill from there, I've got the good shot. Now, I'm showing you this one here. This is actually a cell phone image. And this is a cell phone image about an hour before sunset. So you've got those sort of cooler colors. And once again, you can just see that practically anybody is able to get a gorgeous photo here. You don't have to be a skilled photographer. I just lifted my phone. I put that one big mountain in the middle. That's called Sunburst Peak. I went click, And we've got this beautiful balance and symmetry where there's an equal amount of visual weight on the left side versus the right side. And there we've got our image. Then about half an hour later, this is another cell phone image. The sun was going down. You can see that the sun is no longer hitting those two lakes, and the light had warmed up so much. And now we've got those beautiful golden tones. And finally, for image number 3 here, this is an image from my camera, and it's got some foreground in it. I thought about this one pretty hard. And there, I've got my shot. So I was happy. It was night number 1. We had been off the helicopter for just a few hours, and I had the classic Mount Assiniboine glory shot. I was really happy, and I thought, okay, from now on for the rest of this trip, for the next 2 days, it kind of doesn't matter what happens because I got my shot. So I'm going somewhere with this, so bear with me. The next morning, we headed out before sunrise and wanted to get something different, and I knew that the sun was going to be hitting that peak that's straight ahead in the video there. That's the actual Mount Assiniboine, and it's called the Matterhorn of the Rockies because it's in that same classic Matterhorn shape. So we wanted to get some reflections, and that's one of the rules of composition, as you all know, that reflections are something that we want to attain for because they can often create a really nice foreground on their own, so that you don't necessarily even need to find an interesting foreground. The reflection will be the foreground. So all we had to do was find a little bay on this lake that didn't have any ripples on it because there was a little bit of a breeze blowing, but in one of the bays there were no ripples on the water. So there I am checking my histogram, taking the first photo before the sun has risen, and now any second now the sun is going to rise and it's going to hit the top of that peak, and there it is. It's hit the top of the peak. Look at those beautiful warm tones on the top. Now, as you know, because you are all landscape photographers, this is an exciting moment. Like this is why we do what we do, and this is why we're so passionate about it. It's to be in a place like this at exactly a time like this when everything is coming into alignment. The stars are coming into alignment. You've got the sun hitting the peak. You've got a glass smooth lake in front of you. You've got perfect weather conditions. You're all alone, and everything is just perfectly coming into alignment. So we took our shots from here, and what was really cool, that's pretty much the shot I got, the composition I got from there. Really not a lot of thought that had to go into it. It's just point and shoot. But Leah was behind me shooting this video, and what she noticed was there was a big notch in the reflection. If you look at the lake reflection, see there's that big upside down notch? And look at that. She found that little composition where she thought, hey, this is going to look really cool. Let's put Tim in that little notch there and frame him and take a photo out of it. And there's the photo from the small Sony mirrorless camera that she was using. And as I look at this to me is like a beautiful British Columbia magazine cover photo. Like a photography magazine cover photo. Why is it so interesting? What is it about this that makes this interesting? It's the fact that there is a photographer clearly taking a photo of a really cool mountain, and the photographer is just nicely framed in that notch between the mountain and the water. And that is, of course, one of the rules of composition. It's framing. So I've talked about reflections as a rule of composition, and I've talked about framing. And those are the big two that I'm going to be talking about for the final and third setup, where we discovered something that was just so cool. So we got this shot, we went back to the lodge, we had breakfast, I was happy. Now we had 2 really good photos in the can, and we had one more sunset on the whole trip. So the plan at this time was that we were going to hike back up to the viewpoint where we got shot number 1. This is about a 1-hour hike to get up to the viewpoint, but in the middle of the day, we decided to go for a hike around a lake. So we hiked around a lake. As we hiked around this lake, it was pretty wavy on the lake, and we're just there sightseeing, really, just truly sightseeing. But I was looking at that mountain there. It's called Sunburst Peak, and I was thinking, you know, if this lake was smooth, that would create an absolutely amazing reflection. But the lake was not smooth. But I thought to myself, okay, it's the middle of the day. The wind is always blowing in the middle of the day. And at sunset, typically the wind dies down. So I was looking at this photo that you see on your screen. This is a cell phone photo. And I was trying to picture and imagine what that mountain would look like if there was a really good reflection. So this brings me to the point of vision. And this is really where I'm going with this lesson here. And the lesson that I have learned over and over and over again is that you as a photographer have absolutely got to have vision, because what you're seeing with your eyes may not yet be the final composition that you are able to take. And that was certainly the case here. So I looked at this thing here and I thought to myself, okay, this is going to be an awesome reflection at sunset, assuming that the wave goes still. But there's a principle that I call composition rule stacking that I want to talk about here. And this is really important. So you know that we've got the rules of composition. I've already talked about reflections. I've talked about framing. And you know about leading lines, having some sort of a line that leads to the main subject. So those are the three big ones I'm always looking for when I'm looking for a new composition. I'm looking for reflections, framing, and leading lines. Am I looking for rule of thirds? No. Rule of thirds is not going to result in a gorgeous composition. It's more a fine-tuning tweak for the time you've already got your camera to your eye and you're just slightly moving around looking for the best possible framing of the main subject you've already chosen. So I'm not looking for rule of thirds. I'm looking for leading lines, framing, and reflections. Those three. And if I can stack those rules of composition, in other words, find a composition that combines the most number possible, then I'm going to have a golden shot. So this is something that I would encourage you to do. As you're looking for the composition, you're looking for a composition that will have a combination of framing and reflections and leading lines, if possible, or maybe just two of them. So I knew that with this picture of the lake, with that mountain, there wasn't going to be a leading line, but maybe I could combine reflections with framing. So let's go back to what I was seeing in the middle of the day. And that's what I was seeing as I stood at the edge of the lake. And I thought to myself, okay, at sunset, I'm going to get the reflection, assuming the wind dies down. But what about the framing? How can I incorporate framing into this shot? There's no framing right here. So I thought to myself, okay, when I take a panorama image, it incorporates more of the land, more area than a regular still image. Maybe, just maybe, I can find a little bay on this lake that will act as a frame. So we started walking around the lake even more, and I found this little bay. There we are. It's like early afternoon. There are no reflections yet, but now I'm seeing, hey, this is cool because the shape of this bay it will act as a frame surrounding the bottom reflection of the mountain once there actually is a reflection. So I thought, okay, this is good. This is good, except there are these little trees poking up, and it's going to be a bit of a distraction because the trees are going to be cutting into the reflected image of the mountain. Maybe I don't want that, and I also don't like the fact that the shape of that bay is not truly symmetrical, and it's got some really nice visual weight on the right side, but not really on the left side. So I wanted to keep looking. And by the way, I wanted to say something about the composition of the mountain in the background. What I loved about this mountain is that the big mountain served its purpose for balance and symmetry. That's like the big main subject in the middle, kind of like Horseshoe Bend. It's got that big peninsula, that big island, that big chunk of land right in the middle, and that anchors the whole thing as being a central focal point. But then if you look at the distant mountains on the left, and then you compare their height and their visual weight with the distant mountains on the right, it's kind of the same. And that's what gives it that sense of balance and symmetry for this composition. And that's why I was so attracted to it. It's very rare that you find a mountain like this with an equal amount of visual weight on the left and on the right. There are two mountains just like this in Glacier National Park in Montana. One of them is at what's it called, Two Medicine Lake, and photographers flock to that composition day after day after day. It's such a popular composition because it looks just like this. So back to the framing. I wasn't happy with this bay. I wasn't happy with the land. So we kept walking around the lake, and then I found another bay, and I took a photo with my cell phone, and I wasn't able to capture all of the land with just one photo. So I took a pano with my cell phone. This is it. This is a cell phone pano. So there I am standing there. It's probably 3 p.m. And remember, our plan was we were going to hike an hour up to that big viewpoint to get the classic shot one more time, because it was a sure thing. That's the beauty shot. But now I'm standing here mid-afternoon. There's waves on the water. There's no reflection. And I'm thinking with this vision, will this turn out? Will this actually, is there a substantial likelihood that the water will flatten out and become a mirror to provide that reflection? And then we have the framing that the land, that sort of upside down, the U-shaped land will provide a frame for the reflection. So this is the part about the vision I'm talking about. You have to have that vision of what things might look like when it's game time to take the photo. So we decided we're going to do it. We're going to stay. We're going to forego the hike to the sure thing shot, and we're going to stay here for the unsure thing and take the risk, make a big, big gamble, and hope that this water flattens out and that there's nice sunlight on the mountain. So, sure enough, at sunset, look at that water. Now, I can tell you, I was so excited. We had waited at the lake edge for just hours and hours and hours, just waiting to see if the wind was going to calm down. And I'm looking at my watch, and I'm looking up behind me at the viewpoint, thinking, oh, I probably should have gone to the viewpoint. I really hope this thing turns out. But as it turned out, the gamble paid off. So listen to what I have to say in real time here when I was actually taking the photo. And if I sound excited, it's because I was really, really, really darn excited. So here's what I had to say at the time. It looks like the gamble has paid off. This is really the dream shot. What has just happened is that we thought it was all over. Clouds went in front of the sun, and there was wind on the water, so we had no reflections, we had no good light. Suddenly, there's warm light on the mountain, and the lake has smoothed over, so I've got an 8-second exposure right now with a 6-stop filter, creating a pano. I am super excited. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I can't actually believe it. It's stunning. Isn't that like a landscape photographer's dream, to be finally in that position and knowing you're taking a pano and that it's going to work out in the way that it did? Now, here's one other thing. Even with my widest angle lens that I had on that hiking trip, which was a 20 millimeter, it wasn't wide enough to capture the framing of the shoreline, and I had to capture it with a pano. So I took an HDR pano, and again, that required vision, because I wasn't able to see the results of that pano. I wasn't able to see the fully assembled pano in the field. I had to wait until I got home before I could finally see the image. So I really had this feeling when I was there that when you are looking for a new and unique composition, it is truly like you are hunting for hidden treasure. And it came to me like I was just hit with it on the spot, that you are looking for hidden treasure. That's what landscape photography is all about. You're looking for the perfect lighting setup and the perfect sky and that warm golden hour light, and if possible, a unique composition. So here's what I had to say about hidden treasure, like when I was in the moment. Landscape photography is like a hunt for buried treasure. You have to find it. Nothing is going to jump out at you. You really have to work for it, and you got to dig. That's what we did, and it worked. What a trip! This was so fun! So what are the key takeaways here? They are to, number one, to have a very flexible mindset so that when the conditions are not what you want, you will change your mindset to adapt to the conditions. Number two, it's to have vision. In this story, I envisioned what would happen if the ripples on the lake calmed down and we had flat, smooth water. We would get reflections. And having that vision is so critical because I wasn't able to see it with my own eyes. I had to take this gamble and hope that it was going to pay off, that we would get the flat, smooth, reflecting water. And point number three is involving stacking the rules of composition. I knew that it was most likely I was going to get a reflection, but I wanted another rule of composition to be added to reflections, and I needed that framing. And I searched, I hunted, I walked around, and then I employed the use of taking a panorama in order to get that nice, beautiful framing, curved bottom line of the lakeshore. So stacking the rules of composition really, really works when you search around for a composition that will utilize the maximum number of rules of composition. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will use these principles for your photography, because when you use them, it's going to help you to find beautiful compositions so you can create your own beautiful artwork and beautiful photos that you're going to be very proud of.